So, what's the idea?
Build a bike, do a 3 to 4 day ride, maybe some smaller rides and make a film or something. Oh, and we want to do something for mental health.
Okay, so what does a bike have to do with mental health? What's the connection there?
That's a good question. I don't know, but does there have to be a connection?
Okay, but it's not very environmentally friendly though, is it? A petrol bike?
No, that's a good point. But
Okay, I feel like there's just too much going on here. This was us 10 months ago at the bridge, presenting our project idea to a bunch of you, parents.
we left that meeting with no clarity and feeling slightly battered. We were already under pressure to do something amazing as there were two of us, and our teachers at this point were feeling pretty skeptical.
And yet, we had more conviction than ever. Something was rising up in us, telling us to stick to our guns. We didn't have all the answers, but we did know was non-negotiable, and if nothing else, we were stubborn.
What we knew for sure at this point was one, our passion for bike building.
And two, that we genuinely cared about mental health.
We just had to figure out how these two things fit together.
We knew we were onto something. Call it an inner knowing.
It was time to put the pieces of the puzzle together, and not only that, dive headfirst into the puzzle and live it.
So, between us, we had a chat about mental health and our own experience with it. And what we've realized is that through life's challenges, we've both managed to stay relatively mentally healthy. And then it dropped. The real question.
In a world where mental health, especially in young teenagers post-COVID, has become a pandemic, how have we managed to stay mentally healthy? And more to the point, is that true for everyone?
So, we identified 4 pillars that have been implemented in our lives that we believe have led to our positive mental health.
Those pillars are passion,
Service,
adventure,
and connection. So, we had the framework. And if we could live these pillars through our project and provide an experience for each of these to our community, then we knew we'd be having the impact that we wanted.
what followed was a wild adventure,
Driven by passion,
fueled by connection,
and in service to those who perhaps haven't had the same opportunities that we've had. Before we were even allowed to drive, my friends and I would sit in the back of class and search through Facebook Marketplace for the cheapest possible C70s. I knew almost nothing about bikes or how they ran. What I did know is that I thought this tiny bike from the 80s looked wicked. 2 weeks later, 5 of us had our own C70s. I'd organized a meeting with a seller and checked out a bike that had caught my eye. What I didn't know was that C70s were semi-manual, meaning they have no clutch. This one, however, has a clutch, which turns out had been glued into the transmission housing. After a lesson on how to drive manual, I was moving, roaring down the road at full speed, getting overtaken by Evus on scoopies. I was in love.
I was the same, and finally found the one for me, a 1987 Honda C70. That wasn't perfect, but was mine. I dedicated my time to customizing and modifying the bike, making it my own. And owning an old bike like this brings a host of challenges. The first being learning how to drive it. I'd also never driven a bike like this before, and it took me 2 weeks to make it out of my gang onto the main road. These bikes are constantly breaking down, running out of fuel, getting flat tires, having parts fall off, and so on. And while this would put most people off, I loved it. I spent hours working and tinkering on that bike. I fell in love with getting my hands dirty and became more interested in mechanics.
Ever since that day, that bike has always been there for me. Loyal, dependable, like a man's best friend. Never had any issues.
He's lying. That bike sucks.
Yeah, I haven't gone a week since I got it without something going wrong. Whether it's my headlight flying over my head, getting electrocuted every time I touch my key, my suspension falling off from ride Changgu, or having to replace my entire cylinder head. There is always something. But I love it. And I wouldn't change a thing about my journey with that bike. You see, having bikes that were always breaking down created another love, a love for fixing them.
So we decided to do an internship where every week we go to our friend B's workshop.
The same guy who was supposed to check out my bike and tell me if it was a good buy.
We'd spend 4 hours a week tinkering with our bikes, fixing things, breaking things, taking them apart, and struggling to put them back together.
But slowly we learned and gained more confidence in our ability to fix our bikes. And it felt good being able to fix them ourselves, rather than going to a Benkel every time something went wrong, which was often. We learned so much from this internship that we decided to do it again the following block. And our love for bikes only grew.
This project was born out of a shared love for motorbikes by two mates who, frankly, had no idea what they were doing. But right from the start, the one thing we knew we had to do together was build a bike. But as many asked on the fateful day at the bridge, guys, what does this have to do with mental health?
Well, what we've experienced is that passion has fueled us, and through all the frustration, we never gave up on those things. It's that same passion that continues to drive us forwards, keeping our minds active, engaged, and inspired throughout this journey. In hindsight, what we've realized is that the times in life when we followed our passions have been when we've been most engaged and fulfilled. So, how do we harness this passion for genuine service?
We've experienced firsthand how important mental health has been in our own friend group. Over the past 2 years, we've dedicated 3 hours a week of being service to each other through a young men's group, working through life's challenges and supporting each other in the process. It became clear to us that we wanted to find people whose passion was to support others struggling with mental health issues.
And so, while rallying ideas and looking for the right fit, our teacher, Pak Alex, had a neighbor who ran an NGO here in Bali called Movement of Recovery. After some initial background research, we were introduced to Nev and Bim Bim, the founders of MOA. We instantly hit it off, and there was no doubt in our minds that this was the cause we wanted to back. We're now connected with professionals who are passionate about their causes and service.
Movement of Recovery is an NGO here in Bali that specializes in addiction recovery, alongside community projects with mental health at the core. Nev and Bim Bim, 2 guys that met on their own journeys with addiction, are a force of nature. They are an abundant explosion of infectious energy and passion. They were born to do this. Their passion for helping others and building community is so infectious that you just want to be a part of it.
MOR has since moved far beyond the amazing work they do for addiction recovery. In collaboration with the 11 other Yayasans in Bali, they've set up Bali Bersama Bisa. Together we can. And their mission is to elevate the mental health of individuals within Indonesia.
It's so inspiring to see these NGOs in action, each with their own unique focus and commitment to supporting communities facing challenges such as schizophrenia,
Bipolar disorder,
HIV and AIDS,
cancer,
visual impairment,
the trans and LGBTQ+ communities,
disabilities,
addiction,
education,
and more.
Among their collective efforts, they came together to establish LISA, Indonesia's first mental health and suicide prevention helpline. LISA first launched back in 2021, but unfortunately had to shut down due to lack of resources and funding.
At its peak, LISA was running on only 2 cell phones a day. Now, this quickly became an issue as they had the impossible task of managing over 2,000 calls a day. There was even a day when they reached 12,000 individual callers reaching out for help. What's even crazier is that 65% of these callers were aged between 12 and 19. That's like 10 times middle and high school calling every single day.
And in 2022, there were only 3 mental health care professionals for 100,000 people in Indonesia. This is it. We had to get involved. Now we had the inspiration and the motivation to set some audacious goals. We had a fire under our asses and were determined to make a difference. We had to approach this in a way that supports us in the best way we know how, given our 4 pillars. After weeks of discussing, the Baik project was born.
So, we set some goals. Number 1, build a sick bike.
Passion.
Number 2, hold an amazing event for our community and the Bali Bersama Bisa community.
Connection.
Number 3, raise 200 million rupiah for MOR to run for a year and help relaunch LISA.
Service.
And lastly, for the whole thing to be an adventure for us and everyone else involved.
Adventure. Pretty ambitious for 2 naive 18-year-olds, right? So with the first 2 pieces of the puzzle, passion and service, it was time to kickstart our adventure.
The thing with the bike building that we hadn't quite figured out yet was, well, how to pay for it all. Nev had told us about this guy who had a bike shop in Canggu that might be able to help with some spare parts and maybe some funding. What came next was very unexpected.
They set up a meeting for us with Dirk from Malamadre, a custom bike shop in Canggu, making the sickest bikes on the island. We prepared a pitch and a slideshow and practiced for hours. It was finally time to meet him. I remember first walking into the doors at Malamadre and sitting face to face with this tough dude from Spain. And boy, were we nervous.
The first thing Dirk asked was, how much do you guys think it's going to cost to build this bike?
We could do it for 20 million and have it done in a week.
He laughed. That's funny. That's funny. He laughed our naivety. It was clear we had no idea what we were talking about. At this point, we thought we were screwed and the project would be dead in the water. But no. He saw the passion and adventurous spirit in us and offered to sponsor the whole thing, providing us with all the resources needed to build it. We left that meeting with the biggest smile on our faces, laughing and squealing the whole way home.
And so we could start with the bike. But before we get our hands dirty, we had to design it. We spent months sitting down with Dirk, coming up with ideas, and then changing our ideas. We were very indecisive and needed this thing to be perfect. We definitely got on his nerves, and I'm sure there were times we regretted saying yes to helping us.
So, thank you, Dirk, for sticking with us, even when we were a pain in the ass. But through lots of trial and error, we'd finally designed our perfect bike.
We spent the last 6 months working on this bike, and a lot more went into it, and just fitting parts together and fiddling with the mechanics.
We started by making all the aluminium parts of the bike, the tank, the fenders, the side panels, the battery box, the seat plate, and so on.
This meant learning to cut, shape, and weld aluminium. This was all very new to us, and we made many mistakes along the way.
Yeah. For example, the tank. We spent forever trying to get this right, and then restarted again. But finally, after weeks, it was done, and it was perfect. Exactly what we wanted. But, of course, someone had to ruin it. While checking our welds by shooting air one way into the tank, this guy got a little trigger happy with the air gun and, well, exploded the thing.
Yeah, we all get it. Anyway, we fixed it, and we moved on to the seat, shaping the foam into exactly what we designed.
Once all these parts were built, it was time to disassemble and send the frame and the rest of the bike off for sound, blasting, and powder coating.
Finally, it was time to paint, and getting the right blue was a pain. After days of mixing colors, adding way too much black, restarting, and then making the same mistakes all over again, it was done. We sprayed the parts and began to assemble. This was the first time we got to see our vision come to life, and it was beautiful.
Now, while we were making progress on the bike, the rest of the project stood still for a while. We started doing the one thing we really wanted to do, got absorbed in our passion, and found it hard to get excited about the rest of the project.
Overcoming the need to find sponsorship left us with the feeling of crossing over a big hill. Next came, well, not doing much at all. Yeah, we were building a couple hours a week, but the rest of the project was put on pause. And what we've learned about our friendship is that actually we're both quite comfortable in the pause, and it often takes someone to snap us out of it.
And that someone was Pac George. He sat us down and put some well-needed accountability in place. Then, a week later, went ballistic at us when we didn't reach those deadlines. A battering from Pac George gave us what we needed to get going again.
We've been engrossed in our own passion and adventure, learning, experiencing new things, meeting new people, and getting out of our comfort zone. It's given us tremendous inspiration and joy, keeping our mental state in balance. But now it was time to bring our adventure to the wider community, who we were there to serve.
It was time to start planning the event. Now, I'd never run any sort of event before and had no idea what was coming for us. I don't think we've ever been as busy as we were in February. It was non-stop.
The goal of the event was to bring people together, connect, and simply have a really good time, to shift the mental state of each of us through passion, service, adventure, and connection.
Saturday, 4th of March. 2 months of meticulous planning had led to this point. My alarm rang and I jumped out of bed and opened the curtains. Clear sky. The week leading up had been pretty much non-stop rain. The campsite just 2 days before had been completely flooded. Literally, we could have gone rafting down that road.
The day started at Joshua District. Nev, Bim Bim, James and Dirk met us there early so we go over the plan, again. And this was when the nerves hit. This was real. An hour later, 100 people had slowly piled in, and Joshua District was full. After brunch was served, it finally came time to get up there and welcome everyone. Standing up there, looking out, and seeing all the Baik shirts in the crowd, I couldn't help but feel so grateful for this community. After a quick introduction, a rundown, and a thank you to all of our sponsors, it finally came time to show everyone the bike we've been working on for 6 months. We pulled off the cloak, and the crowd went wild.
Thank you. Thank you. It was time to hit the road. A chorus of engines revved, and I couldn't help but smile. 100 bikes began to roar away. Finally, we could relax and just ride. Almost. I held back to make sure everyone was leaving, and there was Leah, running around frantically. Turns out she left her bike key in one of the cars that was taking up the bags to the site. I sympathetically tried to help for a few minutes before, giving up and leaving her stranded. But I was surprised. I thought it would have been Kipper. Turns out that he didn't disappoint either, and later found out that he'd left his key in his bike and completely drained his battery. After an hour of beautiful riding on the back roads of Bali, through jungles and paddies, we'd arrived at the halfway point, Desa Kopi. Here, everyone got a chance to have a light drink and a cold snack, and the charming restaurant was filled with laughter and buzzing energy. And once all the stragglers had caught up and the tanks were refilled, it was time to get going again.
Everyone got on their bikes and started their engines. Hearing that many bikes, engines revving, is a sound I'll never forget. We set off, and slowly, the beautiful back roads of Bali turned into steep, winding roads. This is the point where I started to worry if I would even make it. You see, I proudly own a 1977 Yamaha RX100. The thing that makes this bike different is that it's very old and a two-stroke. For me to even make it up the hills, I was rev limiting in second gear the entire time, sounding like a strangled cat. Thankfully, the roads calmed down, and I just about made it.
We had arrived. It was around 2 p.m. on a beautiful campsite on Lake Buyan. Everyone parked their bikes, and the site filled with 120 hungry people. The stress was back. MOR and their community had driven up in their custom vans, which they are very proud of, and met us at the site. We had 25 members from the blind, trans, schizophrenic, bipolar, and recovering addicts communities come join us. Cakes, soups, and dumplings were served, and people claimed their tent or hut for the more fragile that they'd call home for the night. People played games, laughed, chatted, and some went on walks through the forest. But above everything, people were genuinely connecting.
Meanwhile, we were running around frantically, trying to make sure everything was going to plan. And of course, there were some slight hiccups. We somehow lost Harriet and Nudie on the way to the off-site huts. Pack Jeff could only fit half his body in his tent. Our extension cables were blowing up, and so on.
We later held a sharing circle led by Nev and Bim Bim. At first, we weren't really sure what to expect, and were a little skeptical when Nev said it would last an hour. However, it turned out to be the most beautiful part of the whole event. The Bali Bersama Bisa community had an opportunity to open up and share their stories, and each narrative held an incredible power. It gave us a real chance to connect with this community.
The evening was filled with live music, performed by the Blind Band, the legendary Alex and Jeff duo, and yours truly, the Marmalades. After the performance was the first time we felt like we could relax. People snuggled around the bonfire, roasted marshmallows, and chatted late into the night. But after removing several motorbikes, which had somehow ended up in our tent, we crashed for the night.
It was an amazing weekend. It was all worth it. Here's a short video that perfectly encapsulates the event. Enjoy.
a success. Seeing something we'd spent months working on all come together was beautiful. It was a big step up from just two boys building a bike. It felt like we had done something greater. It felt like we had built a community and accomplished something incredible.
A week later, we were able to see the fruits of our labor when making our initial transfer to MOR of 75 million rupiah. However, basking in that joy, we once again hit pause and had a little snooze. With the bike still to finish and an auction to arrange, the project stood still for a while. Actually, it wasn't until we started writing this speech that we realized, oh shit, it's only a month ago, we should probably finish this thing.
So we dragged ourselves up and got back to work. The only things left to do with the bike was finish putting together all the parts that make it work. Within a couple of weeks, the bike was done. This was a huge milestone, and the feeling was even sweeter when we rode our bike for the first time.
At the beginning of this project, we set out to raise 200 million rupiah for MOR to run for a year and help relaunch LISA, Indonesia's first suicide prevention hotline.
We've done this in 3 ways: through the event, through your donations, and through the sale of our motorbike, which currently is still live.
As of this morning, we have raised 120 million rupiah.
However, that doesn't even include the sale of our bike. And with the reserve capped at 50 million, we are sure, and with the reserve capped at 50 million, that'll put us 85% towards our goal.
And we are determined to reach this goal. And so, community, we look to you.
Now, we know a number of you have already donated, and for that, we're super grateful. But if you haven't, please do. The more you give, the more you support, and your money literally saves lives.
The bike auction will also be live until the end of the month. And so, if any of you are interested in a super cool bike for an amazing cause, put in a bid and this bad boy could be yours. Oh, now would any of you mind if we started it, including you tree huggers out there? Please.
When we started this project, we were just two naive boys with the dream of building a bike. And today, as we stand here at the edge of completion for this project, having spent a year truly supporting our own mental health and holding a space for others to do the same.
Now, by no means are we mental health experts, but when we asked ourselves what supports our mental well-being, we identified these pillars. And we're not here today to preach our divine knowledge, but rather to share our story and what we learned along the way.
We ask you to reflect on your own lives and ask yourself, how often do you give attention to your own mental health? And how do you embody these pillars? Thank you.
Thank you.